Tensions in the Caribbean are reaching a boiling point. With Venezuela acting provocatively, the situation is prompting a fierce response from the United States. Just days before America deployed 10 state-of-the-art F-35 fighter jets to the region, 2 Venezuelan F-16s flew alarmingly close to the USS Jason Dunham, a U.S. Navy destroyer. This act of aggression pushed the boundaries of maritime engagement rules, sending ripples through military command centers on both sides. Who could foresee the implications of such audacity? In the heart of this standoff, the Pentagon slammed the Venezuelan maneuvers as dangerous and unpredictable, raising the stakes for the already volatile situation. Former President Trump's warning echoed across the naval theater: if Venezuelan pilots posed a threat, U.S. forces held the right to shoot their jets down. The message was clear: the United States is not merely an observer in this drama, it is prepared to engage, and decisively so. As the F-35s took their positions, enhanced reconnaissance capabilities were swept into place. The sophisticated fifth-generation aircraft aren't just equipped for striking targets, they can establish a robust reconnaissance network that monitors even the smallest maritime movements. This technological edge diminishes surprises from the opposition. The F-35s promise a nightmare scenario for Venezuelan leadership: eyes everywhere, limitations nowhere. Venezuela, on the other hand, finds itself caught in a precarious balance between showing strength to its domestic audience while managing its international risks. Its provocative air maneuvers may have garnered attention, yet the repercussions of such bravado threaten to spiral into chaos. The continual presence of U.S. naval forces in the region is a reminder of the lurking storm. As Caracas mobilizes its own defenses, it scrambles to maintain the illusion of control. In a desperate bid to reaffirm its military might, Venezuela has ramped up naval patrols along its coastal waters. With an additional 15,000 personnel deployed for heightened security operations and a narrative steeped in combating drug trafficking and preserving national safety, the government seeks to project strength. However, critics question the effectiveness of its poorly trained militia, seeing it more as a show of numbers than a genuine deterrent. So, what are the neighboring nations thinking amidst this escalating confrontation? Countries in the Caribbean are wary. They know that open conflict could shatter economic stability and disrupt vital shipping routes. Colombia tightens its grip along its border while Brazil and Mexico call for diplomatic solutions and dialogue. Yet, the specter of military confrontation looms large, as does the ominous uncertainty of what might happen if the old tensions erupt into full-blown conflict. Will the U.S. military's calculated moves bring about an end to Maduro's regime, or will a miscalculation set off a wider crisis than anyone anticipated? Tensions are tangible, with the air thick with anxiety and uncertainty. Stakeholders watch closely, realizing that a small error could ignite a conflagration. The balance between show and substance teeters precariously, leaving us to ponder: how long before the line is crossed? Previously, we saw how tense encounters in the Caribbean have been pushing radar systems and human nerves to the limit. Close flights by Venezuelan jets over U.S. Navy ships risk accidental clashes that neither side wants, yet neither is willing to back down. The atmosphere is thick with pressure, and every sudden move could spark disaster. Now, imagine this: a split-second action by a jet is enough to put naval crews on edge, turning a routine patrol into a high-stakes dance with danger. Washington's words are carefully chosen: they seek to hold the line, to deter without igniting a catastrophe. Meanwhile, Caracas walks a razor's edge: it must roar loudly enough to satisfy its own people while avoiding a reckless escalation abroad. But how long can this fragile balancing act last? Behind the scenes, the United States is not sitting idle. Fighter jets and warships remain on constant alert, reacting to Venezuela's brinkmanship. The skies themselves are transforming. It's not just radar blips anymore, something new has arrived. Just days ago, the U.S. quietly deployed 10 F-35 stealth fighters to the Caribbean. These aren't ordinary jets. Known for their cutting-edge technology, these fifth-generation fighters don't just strike, they become eyes and ears in the sky. Their network-centric systems create a web of sensors, weaving together information from ships and land bases. Small moving targets at sea, once elusive, are now locked into a multi-layered surveillance net. This is not a bluff. It's real, tactical power that drastically shrinks the space in which cartels can operate. What does this mean? Every movement, Every cargo boat, every suspicious signal becomes visible to the entire fleet, and commanders get a wider window to plan precision strikes. This is intelligence mastery, not mere posturing. The show of force is as much technical as symbolic, casting a daunting shadow over Maduro's regime. Despite this, the current U.S. deployment is just the opening move. The Trump administration, far from satisfied, is holding back the capacity to establish a sprawling naval base right in the Caribbean's heart. Their presence for now is lean but deadly precise. The region buzzes with over 4,500 sailors and Marines across 7 or 8 warships, forming a quick reaction force, ready to tip the scales in an instant. And lurking beneath, the silent threat beneath the waves, is a nuclear-powered attack submarine. Stealthy and lethal, this submarine doesn't just guard, it hunts and spies, gathering intelligence and ready to strike from the shadows, turning the ocean depths into an invisible battlefield. So, what happens next? Will Caracas bow to the pressure, or will it escalate? The unstable calm hangs heavy with tension, and every player knows that a single misstep could unleash chaos. Will diplomacy cool the fire, or is the stage set for a conflict that could redraw the map of power in the Caribbean forever? Stay with me, because what happens next will shock even the most hardened observers. In the escalating showdown between the United States and Venezuela, the air is thick with tension. The U.S. has deployed a formidable task force, consisting of around 7 to 8 warships, backed by over 4,500 sailors and Marines. This naval presence, bolstered by guided missile destroyers and amphibious vessels, is not just a show of force, it's a strategic rapid response unit ready to react to any provocation. A nuclear-powered attack submarine has also joined the fleet, lurking beneath the waves, ready to strike from the shadows. The message is unmistakable: the U.S. is prepared for crisis management and escalation control, while sending a clear warning to non-state actors in the region. But how does Venezuela respond to this mounting pressure? Caracas is not idle, it is scrambling to assert its presence amid the U.S. naval maneuvers. In a provocative display, Venezuelan F-16s soared over the Caribbean, challenging the U.S. might. Yet, these flyovers are just the beginning. Venezuelan defense officials have ramped up patrol activities, increasing the number of naval assets and hours spent securing coastal waters. Radar networks and air surveillance systems are on high alert, ready to detect any movements from the U.S. forces. On land, a surge of security forces is reported, especially along the tense Colombian border. A staggering 15,000 personnel have been mobilized, showcasing Venezuela's commitment to internal security against cartels and smuggling routes. This narrative serves a dual purpose: to project strength externally and maintain control domestically. As the stakes rise, the looming question remains: can Venezuela maintain its composure in the face of overwhelming U.S. military might? As tensions heighten, both sides are on edge. The potential for miscommunication and accidental escalation looms large. A single misstep could spiral into chaos. Will Venezuela's defensive maneuvers be enough to deter U.S. aggression, or are they merely stoking the fires of conflict? As the situation unfolds, every flight, every patrol, and every decision carries the weight of possibility. What happens when a small mistake leads to a crisis neither side wants? As tensions in the Caribbean rise, Venezuela ramps up its military presence to counteract the perceived threats from the United States. A staggering 15,000 personnel are now engaged in operations both on land and at sea, framing their actions as a defense against cartels and smuggling. Ecuador's government touts the readiness of millions in a nationwide militia, intending to project strength at home and abroad. Yet, what lies beneath this parade of military might is a flawed system, lacking in training and coordination, potentially leading to chaos rather than deterrence. Could this show of force backfire? Amid all this, regional powers are on high alert, observing the escalating crisis with concern. Close neighbors like Colombia have fortified their military along the border, wary of the implications of direct confrontation. The small island nations of the Caribbean, reliant on maritime trade and energy logistics, urge for stability, fearing that the unfolding drama could disrupt their economies. Countries like Brazil and Mexico seek to maintain diplomatic channels, while Cuba adopts a more aggressive rhetoric, yet remains cautious about direct engagement. This delicate game of chess carries risks for all involved. What happens when military posturing turns into open conflict? How will these maneuvers impact local economies, and what does this mean for the Caribbean's future? Tensions are like a tightly wound spring, ready to snap at any moment, leaving all nations to ponder the unpredictable fallout. As powerful naval units patrol the waters and Venezuelan air defenses become heightened, every maneuver, every flight, carries more weight than ever. A single mistake could lead to an accidental escalation, throwing the delicate balance off kilter. Could this be the moment when a clear message becomes a catastrophic miscommunication? What if both sides are pushing boundaries too far? The resolution to this high-stakes conflict hangs in the balance, with unpredictable consequences for the entire region. Tensions are rising in the Caribbean, and the stakes couldn't be higher. As the U.S. military ramps up its presence with 10 advanced fighter jets, the question looms large: can Venezuela withstand the mounting pressure without triggering a catastrophic confrontation? With both sides on high alert, the conflict could spiral out of control in mere moments. In the backdrop of this escalating crisis, Caribbean nations are increasingly anxious. They fear that an open military clash might devastate their economies, particularly tourism and trade. Regional organizations are warning that even targeted operations against criminal cartels could destabilize the area further. The political landscape has become a tightrope walk, with both the U.S. and Venezuela weighing their options carefully. The U.S. believes it can restore stability and ultimately displace the Maduro regime. Their military strategy revolves around a limited strike doctrine, focusing on disrupting organized crime networks rather than a full-scale assault on Venezuela's military. Intelligence verification and legal justifications are key priorities, aiming to minimize collateral damage and diplomatic fallout. The sophisticated capabilities of the F-35s, coupled with naval sensors, enhance target identification and tracking. However, the plan is fraught with risk. What happens if one misstep ignites an uncontrollable crisis? Accidental escalation is a real threat. In a world where close encounters and heavy maritime traffic are commonplace, a minor error could rapidly escalate into a major conflict. The U.S. insists on strict engagement rules, emphasizing visual identification and safe distances. Venezuelan pilots must adhere to their flight paths and altitudes to avoid misunderstandings. As the situation grows more precarious, the fine line between a show of strength and a provocation becomes critical. Any misinterpretation of intentions could force naval defense systems to respond, leading to a chain reaction that neither side desires. The stakes are high, and the pressure is mounting. Will both sides maintain their composure, or will the simmering tensions boil over into open conflict? A single snap decision can ignite a crisis stretching for months. Both sides face a challenge demanding absolute calm under pressure. Venezuela believes it can endure the growing U.S. naval presence. Along its shores, Caracas has intensified coastal patrols and naval defenses, an asymmetric shield against a dominating sea power. Picture clusters of swift, nimble patrol boats weaving through waves, coastal radar scanning relentlessly, and defense batteries ready to fire. This swarm is designed to confuse and restrict massive warships, overwhelming their sensors and commanders. But such tactics come with vulnerabilities. Electronic warfare can disrupt these small crafts' communication and coordination, painting false targets and jamming signals. Sonar and maritime tracking systems are manipulated, making it harder even for Venezuela to track its own vessels and supply routes. Imagine the uncertainty swelling as oil ports and key infrastructure, teetering on the edge between civilian and military scenes, become dangerously exposed. Simply flooding the coast with platforms isn't enough. Without tight training and seamless teamwork, this dense defensive web can choke Venezuela's own efforts instead of hampering the opponent. Meanwhile, the battle isn't only at sea or in the waves, it's a war of political narratives. Washington frames this tense standoff not just as a crackdown on illicit trafficking. It's about safeguarding regional order and maritime security, aiming to win legitimacy among Caribbean neighbors. This move casts a shadow over Moscow and Beijing's own narratives. Russia paints U.S. military buildup as hegemonic overreach. China repeats its steady call for sovereignty and no interference. Both seek to sow doubt and hesitation in capitals nearby, complicating Washington's diplomatic game. Could this swirling mix of power plays spark deeper international entanglements? The fragile balance teeters between cautious cooperation and dangerous brinkmanship. As these global forces circle, the Caribbean's fate hangs on a razor's edge. Will diplomacy hold, or will tensions spiral beyond control, dragging distant powers into this simmering storm? The consequences could reshape the region's future in ways few expect. Previously, we saw how Moscow frames the U.S. military presence in the Caribbean as an expression of dominance, while Beijing insists on respecting sovereignty and avoiding interference. This careful rhetoric sows doubt among regional capitals, pushing them to tread lightly amid rising uncertainty. Now, the pressing need for maritime security slowly nudges these players toward cautious cooperation. Despite the tension, there is a slender thread of pragmatism woven through politics and security concerns, a delicate balance hanging by a fragile thread. But here's a question nobody wants to ask aloud: could this brewing conflict spiral far beyond its current borders? Could it drag not only Venezuela and the U.S. into deeper turmoil but also pull Russia, China, and other global powers into a dangerous vortex? The future unfolds along three stark paths. First, deterrence without escalation, a tense standoff where the U.S. parades its fleet and jets, keeping pressure high but holding back on striking cartel targets. Intelligence and political calculations govern the pause. Second, precision strikes, a swift, surgical assault on cartel nodes, leaving minimal collateral impact but sending a clear, sharp warning. Followed by swift disengagement, this approach aims to reset the chessboard without breaking it. Third, and most alarming, is accidental escalation. Imagine a sudden close encounter, a miscalculated maneuver, or a near collision at sea. Such an incident could ignite a wildfire of conflict, plunging the region into chaos with devastating economic shockwaves. Maritime trade routes, the arteries of Caribbean economies, would suffocate under disruption. The political cost of such a blunder would be monumental, nations forced to reckon with backlash both internationally and at home. It's no surprise that high-level commanders focus most vigilance on this worst-case scenario. They know that even the smallest spark could unleash an inferno no one can control. At present, signals hover unpredictably between the cautious dance of deterrence and the more aggressive posture of pinpoint strikes. Every move is weighted by the cold calculus of cost versus gain. The U.S.'s strategy leans heavily on a finely tuned joint operation, naval and fighter assets working in concert. Legal frameworks and diplomatic channels gird this military architecture, aiming to limit mistakes and defuse fallout before it spreads. This layered approach tightens the margin for error, forcing Venezuela, and any other actor, to reconsider the stakes. As the price of confrontation climbs, so too does caution. Beneath the geopolitics, an invisible force pulls harder than any warship or jet: the economy. The Caribbean sea lanes are vital, carrying barrels of energy and containers filled with goods. Disrupting these fluid highways threatens not only regional stability but shakes the world's supply chains precariously. So, will these tensions find a way to simmer down, or is the stage set for a dramatic upheaval that will echo far beyond the Caribbean Sea? The answer depends on every decision made in the next breath, every move in a game where the stakes are far greater than just military power. Imagine insurance rates soaring overnight because a single military slip-up shakes the fragile calm of the Caribbean. The tension here isn't just about showdowns, it's a relentless battle of economics, endurance, and nerve. The stakes? Vital sea lanes carrying energy and goods that power the region's lifeblood. Both sides know that sustaining high-alert military postures drains resources fast. Venezuela struggles to fund its heightened defenses. The United States weighs the heavy price of maintaining a powerful presence for the long haul. So, a deadly game of controlled risk unfolds, but can it stay contained? In the previous chapter, we explored how even the smallest misstep in this tense chess match could spiral out of control. But the relentless pressure on resources tightens the noose around exhausted forces and frayed nerves. This chapter reveals the quiet strategies both sides use to keep the powder keg from igniting. Military incidents are not just about the flash of aircraft or warships, they ripple through the economy. Insurance premiums for shipping can skyrocket at the hint of conflict. For regional neighbors, the stakes are clear: calm is not just desired, it is demanded. Behind the scenes, unseen cables of communication keep the dialogue humming. Open channels serve as lifelines between Washington and Caracas's command centers, whispering de-escalation. Outwardly, harsh rhetoric may roar, but in the field, rigid protocols temper the fury. Engagement rules form a delicate dance, choreographed to avoid disaster. Vessels and jets stick to strict identification routines, issuing warnings long before a spark of danger rises. Air patrols choreograph altitude and course shifts, generating predictability to prevent surprises. Commanders pore over each patrol report, applying de-escalation checklists with precision. But this psychological tightrope is fragile. Disinformation and false alarms, like phantom shadows in the night, threaten to provoke chaos. Verification systems stand as sentinels, ensuring the truth slices through fog and fear. On the domestic front, Caracas juggles the crisis with mounting economic strain. Fuel reserves drain faster than ever. Air Force parts wear thin amid relentless sorties. Ships endure breakneck schedules, pushing maintenance to its limits. Meanwhile, the swelling ranks of militias and security forces wear down urban resilience. Yet, amid this fight for survival, fiery declarations do more than signal defiance, they buy time. Loud threats blend with measured action, creating a pattern of bluster without full commitment. The balance between external posturing and internal exhaustion teeters precariously. Will this fragile equilibrium hold? Or is the region already one hair-trigger moment away from chaos? The rumble beneath calm waters grows louder. What happens when the carefully crafted chains of communication snap? The next move could shatter decades of delicate peace. Previously, tensions were rising near the Caribbean, with Venezuela's provocative flights pushing the fragile balance. Despite loud rhetoric and increased patrols, the military power struggle on the ground remained steady. Yet, the United States made clear it would shift this balance at any cost, labeling the Maduro government illegitimate and signaling readiness to respond sharply to any threats against its naval and air forces. Imagine this: an enemy aircraft locks radar onto a U.S. warship, low-altitude jets weave dangerously close, or signs emerge suggesting a strike might be imminent. These actions cross Washington's red line. In response, a narrow, tightly controlled window for defensive action springs open, rules carefully crafted to prevent catastrophe while protecting assets. Commanders activate a rapid chain of approvals, where each step confirms whether force is justified. Here, discipline always precedes firepower. This crisis's fate hinges on a delicate dance, on intentions and capabilities. The United States presents a strong deterrent presence, flexible yet firmly tied to laws of engagement. Venezuela swarms the area but cannot match this technological and strategic edge. Neighboring nations plead for calm, seeking to shield their economies and ports from spiraling conflict. The most probable path forward is one of careful limitation, targeted, evidence-based actions, with steady deterrence and strict measures to avoid accidental clashes. Behind the scenes, diplomacy and savvy information control work overtime, soothing nerves and keeping channels open. Economic pressures, the silent force, keep both sides tethered to caution. No one can afford an all-out eruption. As the daily operations continue, a sound emerges on the horizon, a hum that grows louder. Is it the calm before a storm or the prelude to a game-changing move? The tense silence nags at everyone involved. What if one wrong move shatters this fragile peace? The Caribbean waits, breath held, on edge. Could this precarious balance unravel? Will restraint hold, or will a spark ignite a chain reaction nobody prepared for?